Stay free with Russell Brand. See it first on Rumble. Andrew, of course, you wrote the book Freedom Convoy. I wonder if you see in the WEF the topics discussed, and in particular what you have just said about that we are likely now to see a calibration of freedom of speech. A lot of you I know watching this, let me know in the chat, let me know in the comments, regard freedom of speech as an absolute right, an absolute value, obviously excluding immediately and evidently harmful declarations. You know, the famous fire in a theatre example. I wonder, how do you feel a globalist agenda played out during the trucker convoy? I'm referring, of course, to the freezing of bank accounts of people that sought to fund that protest, the ongoing media malignment of the trucker, or maligning of the truckers, and of course the fact that they were responding to a mandate decree that likely came from centralized and unelected bodies.
Well, I don't think anyone who watched what was happening in Canada in February of last year would be surprised to learn that there's a lot of criticism towards central bank digital currencies. Why would we ever accept a digital currency that the government controls when we've already seen a government in a so-called democratic nation freeze the bank accounts of its political critics? And as an added point, there was in Canada I believe it was in May, a system outage of the largest telecommunications provider. And for a day and a half, you could not send money to people. You could not use debit or credit cards in most retail outlets because they couldn't connect to the internet. And I think that was actually a very useful illustration of what happens when everyone's finances are controlled in a very centralized digital way. So I think that is very important here, because we're talking about control, and you cannot have centralization without control that can be used either in a very malicious way by governments, or even just by virtue of technological issues that can come down. So I think that this is something that people need to be more concerned about, and people need to pay more attention to, and not just be consumed by the so-called convenience of these innovations, that they don't realize the inevitable, I think, outcomes of this in someone who doesn't actually value fundamental freedoms.
That's brilliant, Andrew. Again and again, we hear how convenience and safety are used to advance the agenda of these authoritarian regimes that present themselves as anything but authoritarian. The promotion of digital IDs and centralized currencies ultimately lead to a greater ability to control. Even if you don't want to directly accuse existing administrations or corporate interests of having that agenda, certainly this new technology implemented in that way will afford that ability. Stay free with Russell Brand. See it first on Rumble.